Welcome, beautiful and amazing human beings, to the first inaugural Change the News show. Joined today with Tim Pichette. I am Luke Radowski, and this is our first show ever. We will be doing introductions later, mainly because there's so much news to get into that we don't have time now. And of course, we're talking about the economic meltdown that is happening right now, that Donald Trump is saying, quote, nothing is shut down. Life and the economy will go on, as he's claiming all the coronavirus-linked market crashes, quote, good for the consumers because gas prices are coming down, as he blames fake news for this historic collapse. Well, there's many ways you could react to that. There's other people like Jim Cramer who are saying that this market is, of course, in uncharted waters, that this is the end of the bull market, that this is a sign of bad times to come. Tim, what's your take on everything before we get into Saudi Arabia, Vladimir Putin, and a bunch of other stuff?
Yeah, well, thanks, Luke. It's great to do a show with you. And yeah, we've seen a lot of crazy days, and today was a very, very crazy day in the market. And to me, the biggest story here is the fact that the Federal Reserve had a 50 basis point cut last week, an emergency basis point cut that almost never happens outside of a regular meeting, and the market still didn't care. And so for me, when this whole thing was going to kick off was the moment that the Fed finally loses control. Because for me, there's really only about three things that they can save. They can either save the dollar, they can either save the stock market, or the bond market. They can't save all three. And then depending on who you're talking about for the bond market, it really depends who's going to be saved. Right now, it's the debtors that are going to be saved. The people who, all these big companies that have been basically, over leveraging to the max, just tons and tons of debt, and they're the ones who are going to be saved right now, because what the Fed has done is they've come in, they've bought all these bonds, and they've lowered the rates down to almost next to nothing. The 10-year Treasury is at 0.5%. 30-year Treasury is at one point was underneath 1% today. And so what that is doing is the Fed is saying, we don't care about the dollar. What we're doing is we need to keep the bond market price, the bond interest rates low, and by keeping the bond prices low, we can then try to help out the stock market. But it's funny, the main thing they're trying to help out is the stock market, and that's the one thing that they're starting to lose control over right now. It's bleeding over into other markets right now. So we've got oil that's absolutely getting crushed right now. So on screen, what we're showing right now is crude oil is at $31 a barrel, down 23% for the day. Brent oil down 22.97% for the day. I mean, Black Monday in the stock market was, I don't say only, that was down 22%. So right now, oil is having a Black Monday today. And these are days, these are a pretty epic day here. We got into it in our last video. This was the third worst open to the market ever, and we're talking about an open to the market, not intraday stuff. But yeah, we'll go back to Luke and see where he wants to take this in terms of oil, because I know there's a lot of different stuff going on, a lot of different ways that we could take this.
Well, it's important to explain to the people what's really happening with oil, because right now there's an overproduction of oil between a major geopolitical kind of war that's happening between Saudi Arabia and Russia. Not a physical war, but an economic war. One that has been raging for a very long time, that I've been looking at for a very long time. And when you look at Russia and Saudi Arabia, they are on the total opposite spectrum when it comes to the global chess game that's being played. Saudi Arabia is more aligned with the United States and the petrodollar. Russia is more aligned with Iran and China. Iran being, of course, the main chief enemy of Saudi Arabia. We almost even came close to a full-out war between Saudi Arabia and Iran after supposed missile strikes by Iranian-linked proxy, somewhat connected, maybe officially, according to the U.S. government, Iranian forces, but that's a whole nother story right now. But right now, Russia is refusing to cut its oil production, and Saudi Arabia is boosting their oil production. You take that in with fracking, you take that with the United States becoming energy independent and creating their own energy. This, of course, signals with the fall of oil, which, again, some people are saying will go close to $20. I mean, this is huge, this is big, and it looks like this is going to continue for a while, as Russia is saying that they could weather the price of $25 a barrel of oil for up to 10 years. Now, this is also a major kind of economic warfare move. We saw the United States and Saudi Arabia ramp up production to go hit Iran, to go hit Venezuela, to go hit Russia, because again, these countries lose money when oil is not at a specific price. So it has been a major geopolitical weapon, and it looks like Saudi Arabia is unleashing the last oil that people are still willing to buy on the world market, flooding it, and this is why the price is as low as it is. Am I correct, or do you see it a different way, Tim?
Thanks, Luke. And you had pointed out that we were at close to full-out war between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and I think that's really important for two reasons. Number one, economic wars can often lead to hot wars. Number two, the Iran-Saudi strike that happened right around the same time that the credit markets were freezing up. So this was mid-September of last year. I think it was September 14th. And what we had talked about on your main channel before this is how, all of that basically related to the current financial market situation that's going on. But as it relates to the Saudi and Russia situation, right around that same time, you had the Saudis who were going to IPO their Aramco, which is Aramco, I believe that's how it's pronounced, is their state-owned energy firm. And so what they were going to do is they were going to have that, and they were going to have an initial public offering to raise a bunch of money. And so basically, right on cue, you get the Saudi-Iran drone strike that sends the price of oil way the heck higher, which then leads to a very successful IPO from the Saudis. Right on cue when they need to get a whole boatload of money. So now they're sitting on a boatload of money, and what they're able to do now is what they really want to do is consolidate their power. And so they can consolidate their power by I almost said printing more money, but no, that's the Federal Reserve, but by producing more and more oil. So there's actually, you get, on the one hand, you get, they've got a demand decreases in oil because of everything going on with the coronavirus and the economy, so on and so forth. On the other hand, they're now putting the pedal down to the metal and then also, producing a lot more oil. So you're getting a big 1-2 punch. But for them, it's not really about the money. It's about the control. And so a lot of these firms, they can't break even unless the price of oil is somewhere like $85 a barrel or $55 a barrel. And we actually do have a Discord channel that myself and John Snyson run. And we've got tons of great information over here. And what we see over here is that, the Russians, for instance, it's very hard for you guys to see this probably, but $18 is what it's, and actually once you include the transportation costs, you're looking at $30. And that's the cheapest for how much Russia can produce oil. But if you go up to the Arctic region in Russia, you're looking at over $120 a barrel to produce oil. Now, it's also important to point out that there's a big difference between what it takes for them to produce oil effectively and also the amount it takes for them to balance their budget. So for instance, the Saudis can produce oil very cheaply. Basically stick a straw in the ground and pull out oil. But the problem is that in order for them to break even on their balance their own budget, they need $83 a barrel to balance that budget. They've got tons of demographic issues. A lot of their, basically their version of, I guess, the millennials are, there's far more of them than there are, they're baby boomers. So I guess in America, it's, we're about even baby boomers and millennials. I think there's actually a little bit, I hate saying we, both on many accounts. But anyways, this is a story about control. It's not about money. And so Russia and Saudi Arabia both have it in their best interest to drive down the price of oil. And then, they're going to have a lot of their competitors are going to go out of business. And all of a sudden, Russia and Saudi Arabia are going to find themselves having, very few competitors. And it's going to be a very good situation for them. So anyways, I think at the end of the day, it's all about control, not about money. And now back to you, Luke.
Yeah, for the record, I consider myself a Zoomer, just for the record. But again, it's going to be extremely difficult, if not nearly impossible, to undo all of the damage. And again, this is the continuing of Saudi Arabia just being extremely aggressive, because with them producing 2 million barrels per day, that sets their price at $6 to $7 a barrel. No one could compete with that on the already oversupplied, overfilled, abundant global market of oil. The LA Times actually has a very interesting headline. Their headline says, "How Putin Spurred the Saudis to Start a War on America's Shale Oil Industry." What the Los Angeles Times forgets to mention is that, again, Russia is going to be hit by this too. Venezuela is going to be hit by this as well. Venezuela has already been bankrupt because of similar kind of strong-headed economic moves, oil global market petrodollar moves that have eviscerated a lot of its economy. So this is a lose-lose from everyone. You would think with all the weapons that Donald Trump sold Saudi Arabia that he would have a leash on them, but maybe this could even be a bigger geopolitical plan, because even though this move by Saudi Arabia does hurt the American shale industry, the American energy industry, it significantly does have more of an impact on Russia, whose country's GDP is the same as Italy's. But overall, this again is a perfect storm of all of this coming in. Doesn't look good. I was just kind of curious. How do you see this thing playing out? Do you see this going worse with the coronavirus, with all the other debts and all the other bonds and all the other craziness, with all this other Saudi Arabia, Putin, world oil market stuff? How do you see things unfolding? Because the trajectory doesn't look nice.
I mean, it sort of just depends who this is not going to unfold well for. And so there is a case to be made that the stock, if you're judging everything based off the stock market, there's a case for the stock market that could actually hyperinflate because we print so much money, and even people like the Fed comes in and maybe starts buying stocks like we mentioned on our previous video, and that could send the market to the moon. But if only, let's say, 10% of Americans have any appreciable assets in the stock market to begin with, 90% of people could care less if the stock market is up. So you got to, take into account, who it's going to be good for. So, I mean, let's say, a lot of the baby boomers right now, I think the average 55 to 65-year-old, 61% of them have less than $100,000 saved in retirement. And so right now you're looking, okay, great. You get $15,000 to maybe $20,000 a year from Social Security. Maybe your $100,000 gets you $4,000 a year. Now you've got to live in retirement off $24,000 a year. Every 10 years, everything you want to buy is going to double in price. And so that's going to create tremendous downwards pressure on things like housing. And so it's going to be bad news if you're a baby boomer that needs to then sell your house to a Zoomer like Luke and I, but that's going to be good news to somebody like Luke and I, who maybe now can then buy your house for half the cost. And so again, this is not financial advice. We don't know exactly. No one has a crystal ball. Nobody knows exactly how this is going to play out. And we're seeing so many unprecedented things that in a free market, I could probably tell you how things are going to shake out. The problem is we don't have a free market. We have a Federal Reserve central bank induced market that is constantly manipulating everything 7 ways to Sunday. And so when the Fed can come in and, like China, for instance, last month, China came in and in one day printed the entire market cap of Bitcoin, which at the time, I think Bitcoin's was 175 billion. China printed 174 billion just on a Monday, just on a regular Monday. It wasn't even big news. Stock market went up that day, I believe. And so if you can go and print these assets just in the funny money in this blink of a second, who's not to say they can't print $10 trillion? And it's sort of like a gambler who's going and putting all their money down in red, and every time they need to keep doubling their bets, and eventually they're not going to keep doubling their bets, and they're just going to lose. And so it really just depends who they're going to lose for. I mean, personally, not to give myself a shameless plug, but I did give a speech down at Acapulco where I told people how I thought they should play this, because I thought there was a 50-50 chance the market, soars higher, but not because things are going great, because of central bank intervention and because the average person doesn't know the things that we're talking about here. Also, a very good chance the market could tank. And so what I said on stage, and the first time I ever ran this strategy and told people about this on air, live on video, was October 3rd, 2018. So I'm not Monday morning quarterbacking this, but I'm not trying to give myself a big pat in the back. It's just, if you're listening to somebody talking about financial information, you have to do your own due diligence. Go and search me out. Go research what I have to say. Don't just take my word for it. But what we were doing is, I thought there was a good chance the market goes up or it goes down. So I actually had a strategy where if the market went down, it sort of worked like let's say homeowners insurance, where let's say there's a $1,000 deductible and you cause $900 of damage to your house. Well, the deductible doesn't matter. You just pay it off. However, if your house burns down, the insurance builds your house back. That's sort of where we're at now, where 2 weeks ago everybody met the deductible, which was only down a few percent from the very, very top, and now all these downs are basically, they're all being mitigated. And so most of our clients are still up year to date. It's very positive over here. We've got some investments that are up 300%, these hedges that we put on. But also the strategy works for, okay, if the Fed comes in and buys, starts buying the stock market and starts pumping in trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, then our strategy would benefit from that as well. But it's not something you always want to run. I'm not saying I'm some snake oil salesman that just do this all the time, because it's a very dynamic situation. But I do have the proof that I was on video going back to October 3rd, 2018, which is an important date, because the date after all that was the day Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, came out and said that we were on quote unquote autopilot, and that the Fed was going to keep raising rates by 1/4 point every quarter. And then what they were going to do from there is that they were going to sell $50 billion of bonds a month. I knew that couldn't happen, and I've gone into this many different times before on other shows. But the quick version of this is that I knew that none of this could happen, but we're in these unprecedented times where we don't have a free market. And since we don't have a free market, there's a good chance the stock market goes up because of intervention, and there's a good chance it goes down because people don't care about the intervention anymore, Luke.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when you make up the rules as you go along, and you play in this fairy tale land where math doesn't exist, where debt could just be accumulated, and it's like, whatever, $23 trillion, what is it? Now, I think it's $23 trillion. It's just like, it's utterly insane. There's no going back from that. And the pooch has been screwed, to say the least. Now, also, I wanted to issue an official correction, an official clarification. I am not a Zoomer. I messed up my memes. I am a Doomer, for the record. Not a Zoomer, a Doomer. That could be one way of describing me. But this is some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about. Tim has a financial kind of background. I love modern day politics and geopolitics, and I love getting into the news that we're not supposed to know about. So expect more of this content from us on this channel. If you liked it, subscribe, tell your friends about it, because we're going to be doing a lot of videos. The goal starting tomorrow, this is kind of our first little play around, see how things go video. The goal is to do 4 videos every single day on this YouTube channel, so expect a lot coming from us starting tomorrow. But I have a lot of hopes for this. I know Tim for a few years now. He started with World Alternative Media. He started doing a lot of different stuff all over the alternative media sphere. How would you introduce yourself from someone who doesn't know you, Tim?
Yeah, no, thank you for that introduction. I guess, if you really kind of take the story back to 2008, I graduated in 2008. I wanted to be a financial analyst, which, good luck trying to be that. I mean, I had probably just as good a chance trying to become like a bikini model in 2008. And so I took a job as a financial advisor. But I also, if you back things up, during school or university, which, I think is all propaganda anyways, but I ran my school's endowment fund, specifically in charge of financial stocks, in 2007, 2008, against everyone's best wishes. I put that into cash. And so the guys that inherited my fund, because I graduated May 2008, everything collapsed September, a few months later. And so that fund ended up having the best track record in America that year. Then went to go work for a company called Waddell & Reed, where there we had the best 5-year track record every single year I was there. Not necessarily because I was there, but just because, I was just showing that I had, that good foresight and that good insight. But I ended up getting out of college my Series 7, Series 66, a bunch of different licenses. I got a chartered retirement planning counselor designation, but the big one is the certified financial planner designation. But just because I have that doesn't mean you should trust me. You should go back, do your own research yourself. But I was growing up in an environment where I believed in the Federal Reserve. I believed in all these central banks. I believed in Goldman Sachs. I was in a class to be full disclosure, I wasn't actually on the team. Every single person in my class except for me was on the team because I didn't want to have to go spend all my weekends down in New York City, which was about 5 hours away from my college at the time. But my classmates won the national competition on the Federal Reserve against Harvard, Yale, MIT. Our actual saying was, "In Fed we trust." So, just think about the propaganda. And so I never knew that the Fed was private. And one day this guy tells me, he looks like Rob Zombie. He's got his hair down to here, and telling me that the Federal Reserve is private. I'm like, come on, man. I've got all these designations and credentials. He sends me to watch Freedom to Fascism. That leads me to Creature from Jekyll Island, which then leads me to, eventually being at the TDV Investment Summit on stage with, Gio Griffin. And so I'm someone that got red pilled, pretty early out of the gates on all this stuff. Luke was a guy who I looked up to, big time, from back in the day, just, having the cojones to put all this information out there. But I think I first met Luke at the Nexus Earth Conference in September of 2017. And I was there to try to convince people a little bit early, mind you, that they should sell their Bitcoin into these special types of trust. In these trusts, you get to bypass all capital gains. It's really only good for early adopters, people that have like 7-figure type trusts. So unless you've got underneath 7 figures of Bitcoin, it's probably not going to apply to you. But anyways, this was September of 2017, before the big mania that we had an idea, myself and Ernest Hancock, that this was going to be a big thing. Little did I know that it would absolutely take off. And then people started asking me about crypto IRAs and Bitcoin IRAs and all this other stuff. I then, long story short, I was set to go speak at the at Anarchapulco 3 Anarchapulcos ago. And my investment firm decided to tell me, you know what, every single advisor in America, 17,000 of them, you are all banned from talking about Bitcoin. And this was after I'd already spent like thousands of hours of research into how to do these trusts, into how to do crypto IRAs. So I ended up having to pay a $17,000 fine, drop my Series 7 license. I still have a Series 66, so I can still help people out with portfolios and all that other stuff. And then effectively the state of Arizona shut me down for an entire year, and not shut me down, they just wouldn't give me a fingerprint card, so I couldn't really work for almost all of 2018. But now I'm back, bigger than ever. I've got all the track record to prove everything. And I'm not saying this to, create victory laps over here. It's just, people don't really know me because of shadow banning. I was a big time libertarian. I was in the Ron Paul movement, and then 2016 came around, and I saw what was going on with the Libertarian Party, where all of a sudden they were asking Bill Weld about how dangerous guns are, and he's saying that handguns are more dangerous than AR-15s, and you've got to bake the cakes for people. And for me, when they made the gun comment, that was just when I finally decided, I'm done with the Libertarian Party. Decided that I would pull for Donald Trump. Created a page August 27th, 2016. By the time of the election, had over 32,000 people following me. And then the week after the election, I had a fake news list. Go look it up on my page, November 16th, 2016, where I'm claiming to be the first person to appropriate that term from the left. And there's a whole story I can get into about that at another date. But that day, I went from getting 1,200 new subscribers down to negative. I've been negative ever since for 4 years. And so that's why nobody knows who I am. And this is not about me being some, big celebritarian over here. It's about me trying to get the information out, because this is not information everybody knows. And what really kind of struck a fire under me is when that guy told me the Federal Reserve is private. And I'm like, I've got all these designations. I was in the class that won the national competition, and I didn't know it was private. So if I don't know it's private, who the heck else knows it's private? And so it really lit a fire under me. That's my passion. So I did start on World Alternative Media, but even prior to that, I was doing a lot of shows with Ernest Hancock of Freedom's Phoenix, who he created the Ron Paul Revolution logo, helped kick all that off. And so, I really have to thank Ernie for where I'm at, and then Josh, and now, being able to do videos with Luke is really just such an honor to me. But, definitely appreciate this. I know it's sort of a long intro, but, you've got to, know who's the other person is there that's helping giving you the news. So, I invite people to go check out my previous work, because not a lot of people have seen it, but I do have a pretty good track record, and I really look forward to helping bring you guys the real news going forward.
So that was pretty long. Holy cow. You speak really fast too. I don't know if the audience is going to like that or hate that, but I think that's usually a good thing for YouTube, because everyone just wants things quick and rapid. So, obviously we're doing strategies here to circumvent a lot of the shadow banning, a lot of the demonetization. As far as me, if you never heard of me, I'm a celebritard. I've been doing this for like close to 20 years now, trying to get hidden information, trying to learn, trying to do research, and doing my best to attain value from information and give it back to you as much as I can. That's my major goal. That's what I do. That's what I strive to do every single video. What can I give you? What can I give you that you can't get anywhere else that will help you in life? And the best way to do that is to give you information as it comes in from an unbiased, not left, not right, not controlled by any special interest news. This is real, this is raw, this is unedited. We don't have any graphics here. We're just going to release as much as we can, do as much as we can. And if you like that, click subscribe, click the notification button. It's a brand new channel. That means you're probably going to get the notifications, unlike my previous channel. So stay tuned for more here on Change the News. That might be the name. I don't know, maybe. Who sees? Well, let us know what you think the name should be.
Change the News channel. Yeah.
Change the News channel. I like that kind of, but that's too long. But Change the News. I don't know. Let us know. Other way, stay tuned for more here on Change the News channel. Maybe. See you later. Bye.
See you guys.